Today's workers are more educated and connected than ever before. The idea of what work is supposed to look like, it seems to be changing. Larry Dignan is here with us now. And Larry, as we both know, nothing is as certain as change in this world. And, you know, when it comes to companies always looking to their customers for how they're changing and their needs, the same can be said for their employees, right?
Yeah, so in recent years, there's been a lot of attention on the customer experience. So there's a whole bunch of software focused on personalizing experiences, reaching customers all over the place on whatever screens they're on. And in the workplace, the employee experience has been kind of lagging, right? So typically you have to go to a system and log in to see something instead of it being pushed to you. There are bunch of employees who don't even have corporate email addresses. They're usually, working at restaurants or something like that, or out in the field. So there's a whole genre of software companies looking to boost engagement and just improve the employee experience. And it's a crowded space, and no one sort of has the secret sauce just yet, right? So we all know it's important, though, because the labor market's really tight. So the returns for, if you have a really good employee experience and a cohesive culture, it improves productivity. It keeps the employees on point in terms of goals that are handed down from above. And it also helps them do things like advocate for the company, on social, right? So you increasingly see these things where you write a story about a company and then there's obviously some system in the background that tells all their employees to tweet. And then you suddenly get all these notifications pushing this one corporate story. I kind of cringe at that, but that's just part of the overall experience. What's weird about the market, though, is HR is involved with it. There's communications, there's marketing internally and externally. And there's a lot of chefs in the kitchen, so to speak. So it's a space that's evolving, but I wouldn't be surprised if employee experience gets, a lot more play coming up in the future.
And Larry, we talk about this a lot, how just work in general is changing. With millennials and Gen Z, they're demanding that they get flexibility and that they can work remotely from wherever they are, that kind of thing. So it just seems like right now with the digital transformation, all of this working in, the timing is right for companies to really look to this type of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's where it gets tricky. Right? Because you have to reach your workers on multiple screens and multiple places and all that. But I think it's a little unclear right now whether these employee experiences and those sort of efforts, whether those technologies are, part of a broader digital transformation plan, or it's kind of a one-off project led by HR, marketing, communications, or whoever. And so the space is pretty immature at this point. SAP did buy Qualtrics, which does employee experience, but their big thing is customer experience. And it's going to be interesting to watch how this develops, because right now, if you're a company and you're trying to improve employee experiences, you're probably doing it piecemeal. And you're stitching together a bunch of different parts and softwares and cloud services and things like that. So there isn't like one magic bullet here. I think the other thing is just, you're improving these experiences, and yes, it is what Gen Z and the millennials want. And they have to function that way, really, because they're used to their iPhones, they're used to their social media, they're used to, and the workplace has kind of lagged that in a bit, right? Despite, things like Zoom and Slack and these other tools, generally speaking, the communication thing gets lost, the farther you go from the CEO's office. And I think just herding the cats and herding all the different employees, I think is going to be, tricky, right? And it's also part of a human problem. It's not just software.
So, what is the advice, do you think, Larry, to companies that, like you said, the waters are pretty muddied here with so many different companies in the mix, and if they're looking at this as a piecemeal thing, that can get ugly as well. So is the suggestion just to start at a certain point and kind of work back from there, or what do they do?
Yeah, I think you got to look at it in terms of problems you're trying to solve. Right. So if you look at something like communications, there's a few companies that focus on just doing that well, right? Like just getting the communications out to the right people in the right offices at the right time on the screens where they actually work. And that alone could be big, as opposed to a big email distribution list or, a bulletin board in the break room or whatever. So that's one way to look at it, right? So if communication is a pain point, then you probably start there. And, HR, that's another place, that's another obvious place to start. And the reason for that is you want employees engaged not only for retention and, to keep churn down, but you also don't want employees putting bad reviews about your executives on Glassdoor, right? Like Glassdoor just came out with this popularity contest for CEOs and their approval rating. So it's no different than a political campaign. And, so maybe you start with HR, or maybe you start, that's why marketing's involved in this too, right? Because the employee experience, a lot of this is internal marketing. So it's very, I think each individual company sort of has to look at where the pain points are and just kind of proceed that way. Because I don't really know how the space develops. There's dozens of these companies, and they're all looking at it from different angles. Some of them are into the social enterprise sort of thing. Others are more about, task and sort of getting them done. But there's just a lot of coordination and all that. So I think it's really going to be company specific. And at this point, I don't think you can wait for some big vendor to, roll out some employee experience suite that's going to cure all your problems. I think you're just going to have to address the pain points as they go.
Yeah, most definitely. All right. Well, what do you think, Larry? What does this space look like in the future? What does it all mean? What's coming?
I think it's got to consolidate. When you look at the market landscape for these things, and the weird part is none of these companies are exactly directly comparable, but there's dozens of them all touching some piece of this. So I do think, it'll be consolidated. I could see Slack picking up some of these companies. I could see, it all depends on the focus about who the buyer would be. But I think SAP with its Qualtrics buy, we could quibble over whether $8 billion was too much or not. But I think the idea is right? So SAP can combine Qualtrics with their HR systems and all that, and it kind of makes sense. But I think we'll start seeing the space get consolidated. It just looks like other spaces, like, in the cybersecurity, there were a zillion of those things. A lot of them were acquired. And I just think they're going to look like, purchases for other companies.
Yeah, definitely sounds like it. All right, Larry. Well, this is certainly something we'll be talking about a good bit in the future. And for more on Larry's article and employee experience in general, make sure you check out ZDNet.